up next, I want to welcome Ryan Burchnell.
Thank you so much. Just really glad to have you guys here with us in person today, but also everybody that's joining us remotely. We're glad you're with us as well. I'm Ryan Burchnell. I'm Director of FirstNet Strategy and Development for the FirstNet program here at AT&T. Little bit of a different background than a lot of AT&Ters. Usually, I'm the corporate guy standing in front of a bunch of public safety people. Today, I'm the public safety guy standing in front of a bunch of corporate people. So that's great. I'm glad to be able to do that. So my career started at the Sheriff's Office in Leon County, Florida as a deputy sheriff. I worked my way through the different ranks of the Florida Highway Patrol, retired out as the chief of the Florida Highway Patrol, and then I went up to Alabama as the executive director of the state police in Alabama. The unique thing about my career is that it wasn't just in law enforcement, it also was in technology. So in my last role at the Highway Patrol, I was actually detailed to the department above us, the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles, and there I was our chief technology officer. And basically I had anything with an on and off button that the entire department had, anything from, yes, we still had pagers at the time, all the way up through all of our network assets, our data center assets, our network, everything that had that power source to it, that was in my shop. One of the other unique things that I had during that time frame was also the governor asked me to head up our FirstNet program in the state of Florida, which we affectionately called FloridaNet. And it was about gathering the details of what the state of Florida's public safety practitioners need in a dedicated mobility network. And we did that across all 50 states, 5 territories, and the District of Columbia in order to determine what did public safety need if they were to have their own mobility network. I carried that on after retiring there to my role as executive director in Alabama, where the governor there also asked me to head up their FirstNet program, and we were able to do the same there. And then once AT&T had met its contractual obligation, they had signed the contract, what we did at that point was I came over to AT&T. So I was recruited to come in and help them set up the FirstNet program here. And we did that by setting up a public safety team. We did that by focusing in on what public safety needed, security being part of that. But I need to take you back just historically. How did we get here for a need of a dedicated public safety network? Well, 9/11 was really the impetus for that. That 9/11 taught us that not only could we not talk, we weren't interoperable across public safety disciplines across the United States, we weren't even interoperable in the city of New York. The New York City Police Department, the Fire Department of New York, the Port Authority Police, all operating on separate systems. And we had to do something about that. So there was an interim step in the 9/11 Commission report that called for the interoperability of land mobile radio systems. And that part, some of you may know, is the P25 standard. Beyond that, the 9/11 Commission realized that the future of public safety communications was not just in land mobile radio, push a button, talk, release, let somebody else talk. That just wasn't going to cut it. And they also understood that public safety no longer could depend on commercial grade network services. We couldn't be competing with someone playing a video game or someone having a heavy data rich environment that was bringing down network assets when public safety needed them the most. So they said, okay, let's set aside spectrum for public safety, and we need to build them a network, but we know that the government probably shouldn't do that. We're not real good at keeping things up to date, so what are we going to do about that? We're going to build a public-private partnership, and somebody out there is going to come in and partner with public safety to build a nationwide network, but we're going to provide robust oversight over that, meaning we're going to have a standalone federal authority that oversees that, and we're going to then make sure that they meet these benchmarks of whatever public safety says that they need in a network. And that's how that process came along. Interestingly, for AT&T, I think all of us on the public safety side said, well, we've got all of these providers out there today. They're going to bid on this project. We've got Other integrators, like the big DC integrators for the Defense Department, those kind of folks, they'll probably bid on this. Maybe some of the other major technology companies will bid on this. And in the end, AT&T was the only major telecom/technology company to bid. And that tells you the scale and the complexity of what we're dealing with in FirstNet was so large that most people weren't able or weren't willing to put their brand on the line to do this, AT&T being the exception to that. And now we sit about 7 years later, where are we now? Remember that all of these things 7 years ago were zeros, right? We didn't have a single connection. We didn't have a single device on the network that was FirstNet capable, meaning it could use the dedicated spectrum, band 14 spectrum that came along with the public-private partnership. Coverage was what it was, right, for AT&T around the country. And you see here, we're now sitting at almost 6.4 million connected devices on the network in a little less than 7 years. Over 865 different devices now that are FirstNet certified, FirstNet ready devices that can operate on the network. And by the way, the AT&T network as well. They just have extra things that they have to have for FirstNet. And we're about 2.97 million square miles of coverage. A lot of coverage enhancements have been done specifically for the public safety community, where we may not be building sites in a certain area as a commercial carrier because, quite frankly, there's no people there. Public safety is there. People are there on the weekends, out in the wilderness, hunting, fishing, camping. There has to be coverage where public safety has to provide services. And with that, we've added over 250,000 square miles to the network, larger than any other network in the country. AT&T and FirstNet share that infrastructure, so it's for both networks. So let's talk a little bit about the future. We've talked about the history, where we are today. The future is in this $8 billion reinvestment that was just announced in February. Part of the contract requires that AT&T pay in money to the public-private partnership in order that when public safety is not using that dedicated spectrum, AT&T can use it for our commercial purposes. That's the public-private partnership, the give and take between the two entities. However, we have to pay for that, right? On top of deploying all of this, which is billions of dollars in deployment costs, we also pay in. Well, there's only two things that the First Responder Network Authority can do with that money. One, they can operate themselves, right? They have personnel oversight over us, so we're basically paying to be audited constantly, right? And we're paying for people to question us on everything that we do for public safety. Is it right for public safety? Is this what public safety needs, wants? Blank is good for public safety, right? If it doesn't answer that question in the affirmative, then we don't do it, right? And they hold us accountable for doing or not doing everything that we do. The other thing that's required of that money, remember two things: operate, reinvest. So this is part of that reinvestment. As we pay in, they operate, take what's left over, reinvest back in the network. That could be with us, it could be with others, as long as it's progressing the technology, right? And that's where a lot of this money is going in coverage, but a lot of it's going towards security, right? And security in that, we're moving along the same path as a commercial network in that we're going to go to 5G standalone. That's where this gets funded from. That we have a separate core as part of the FirstNet network. It's not the commercial core, it's physically separate, meaning that we've duplicated all of that infrastructure inside of our facilities for FirstNet. And FirstNet alone, public safety, right? So everything that we do to the commercial network, we have to turn around and do twice now on the infrastructure side. Not the tower piece, but the core pieces all have to be touched and have to be upgraded, just like the commercial network. So that's the part that I want you to take away from here, because what's important with that is the 5G standalone core, as most of you know, means higher levels of security, greater reliability of the network. And so that's key as we talk about that today. So we want to talk a little bit about, okay, I understand all of that. You've got dedicated spectrum, you've got dedicated core, public-private partnership, $40 billion over 20 years, 25 years. What else are you going to do to move public safety communications along? Transforming public safety communications really fits in these 5 buckets, and that's the network and connectivity piece, the 5G standalone piece. I'll talk a little more about that. Disaster response, we have to have dedicated and separate disaster response capabilities for public safety because we can't be competing with our enterprise and commercial customers. They have their needs. We have to be able to focus on public safety with dedicated assets. Extended connectivity, there's some features in FirstNet. There's high-powered user equipment that's only allowed on band 14. How do we leverage that and how do we secure it? And then some other features related to that about extending in-building coverage and that expansion to 5G in-building coverage as well. Innovation and technology is really about our mission-critical platform. For those of you that don't know, the overarching standards body, 3GPP, defines mission-critical standards for push-to-talk, in other words, radio replacement, and it defines standards for data, defines standards for video. So we're building that platform for public safety. No one else in the world is going to have that comprehensive mission-critical services platform that we will have. And also focusing in on school safety. Obviously, all of us know over the last decade, school safety has become a paramount thing that we're doing, so we're focusing a lot of innovation around that and how do we keep our students safe. And finally, health and wellness for first responders. It's great if you have a network. What if you don't have anybody there to use it because they're having their own health and wellness issues? So not part of the contract, but something that we're giving back. We have a therapy dog program that we do with Global Medical Response in partnership with them. And there's 30 dogs around the country that we send out to public safety when we need them. It's affectionately named ROG the dog, whichever of the 30 dogs they share the name. But ROG is our response operations group. So ROG the dog goes out with our responders and helps public safety. And we also have set up a wellness coalition with all of the major public safety associations in the country to keep our first responders safe. So as we talk about that network and connectivity piece, what is that going to do? Well, obviously 5G will allow us to do, and we're in a non-standalone environment today, so we already have 5G for FirstNet, just like we do alongside commercial, but in a 5G standalone environment, we're going to be able to implement things like network slicing and future-proofing, right? That standalone 5G, adaptable, capable, more secure, all of those future-proofing things that we need to do to keep public safety on the front end. But the network slicing piece is interesting. I think some of the telecommunications sector is looking at that as, well, public safety will have their slice on our network. Well, that's all fine and great, but that's still a commercial network, right? Doesn't have a dedicated core, doesn't have priority and ruthless preemption to ensure that public safety has access to the network and has priority on the network. It doesn't have all of those robust features that we built in not because we said so, because public safety said so. Those were the requirements in the contract. So network slicing is going to be different on a separate core because we're going to do slices for specific public safety things. Mission-critical video, mission-critical data. A specific incident may have a slice. A specific discipline in public safety, fire, EMS, law enforcement, emergency management may have their own slice. We may be able to slice down to the local level or the state level in order to do certain specific things for public safety based on the mission. That's what makes FirstNet mission ready. It's what makes it different, right? And so we also talk about being able to travel along that advanced encryption capabilities that are coming with 5G standalone. We're sitting at 256-bit today. We'll be able to do the 5G AKA standard as well moving forward. One of the other things that we will be able to do from a security standpoint is some real-time monitoring and automated response type things that happen in the network that we can't do today. Moving our public safety partners along that path so that they don't have to do it for themselves. They don't have to worry about it. It's just going to happen with that $8 billion reinvestment. So that mission critical solutions capability, what that is doing in this environment is allowing first responders to rely on things that today even video is a challenge. Even on the FirstNet network it can be a challenge, right? Because we're talking about in that future environment, in the 5G standalone environment, with the additional security protocols and the different priority and preemption schemas, that we're going to potentially be able to do some guaranteed bit rate, some streaming related to law enforcement, fire operations, where those people working in those environments at a mission critical level can depend on that video capability, they can depend on that data capability, where today they're simply depending on that push-to-talk radio, right? And that's why they don't want to walk away from that. They haven't really digitally transformed like the world around them because, quite frankly, they just cannot rely on that. It's not secure enough. It's not reliable enough for them to do what they want. So as we move down this continuum, we're able to bring public safety along, and they never get left behind. So let's talk a little bit and double click into dedicated security. So what do we mean by that? Number one, we mean by that we have a dedicated security operations center for FirstNet. It sits alongside our AT&T security operations center, but it is dedicated. It is physically separate people, right? And that each one of those personnel in there are looking only at FirstNet when it comes to our security operations center. Those staff members have over 12 nationally acclaimed certifications, things that you would expect, CISSP and CISA, work with CERT, work with DHS's NSTAC. So we're right alongside our public safety partners in that with the appropriate certifications and the appropriate groups that we're working with. When we talk about the comprehensive encryption, we're talking about not only in the network itself, so we're fully encrypted from tower to core and back to tower again. The only time that you may not be encrypted is when you get outside of our network, when you go to a competitor's network, go to your own private network, whatever security protocols on that side, we can't guarantee what's there. But if you're operating within the FirstNet network, which is one of the values of having our public safety community come together on FirstNet, is so that they are fully encrypted in all of their communications as long as they stay inside that network. And then we're also providing end-to-end virtual private network solutions on top of that, so they can put an extra layer of security in there as well. You see some of the applications down at the bottom, and I'll talk about the application ecosystem. It is part of our security and why in a moment. But we're also compliant with FIPS 140-2. So we're stacking security, layered security on top of each other in order to serve public safety appropriately. On the secure applications front, when I said that's another layer of security for us, how is that so? Well, we have our own application ecosystem, our own application. It's not a store, but the ecosystem and the catalog that we have isn't just to say, okay, I've now also over here in the FirstNet catalog. It is a robust set of requirements beyond what's required of Apple and Google. And we have our own level of security requirements for applications in the FirstNet application catalog. Doesn't mean you can't use a non-application catalog application within a network. It means that you can trust what's in there because we've either done a listed or a certified application. Listed is no cost to the application provider. Certified costs some money because there's a different set of review that's happening there. But basically what that is doing is allowing for us to ensure, number one, that the application's for a public safety purpose. If it's not for public safety, it's not in the catalog. Number two, it allows our user community to rate that app based on the public safety context of the app. So they're giving it a 4 or 5 star rating. Maybe they're giving it a 1 star rating because it doesn't work when they need it to. That's all there for them to communicate with each other. But beyond that is the listing or certification process, which means that they've got to prove things like scalability, reliability to certain metrics. There has to be a code review for certain security things beyond what Apple and Google require. So it's making sure that we're going deeper, further in that security review for those applications, and it's really a key to what we're doing for the public safety community. They can trust it, they can use it, and we're putting our brand behind it to say, yes, stamp of certification is here, public safety, you should be able to use this and not be worried about it. And we talked about the SOC. Our ICAM process was also a requirement from public safety that we do federated single sign-on for FirstNet, that they didn't want to have to come up with a whole new identity, so we had to be able to use what they're using at home and federate that single sign-on into FirstNet and all the applications that they use. So we provide those tools, APIs, and SDKs to our application developer community so that everything can be fully integrated for the end user in public safety. With that, we have been able to do that, as far as I know, we are the only Federal Bureau of Investigation CJIS certified way to enter the FBI's systems unless you do it directly with them. And so our security has gone through that testing over a period of years with the FBI CJIS division to say, we trust your security and your ICAM solutions so much that we're going to allow those approved public safety partners that we allow into our systems, if they're using your ICAM solution, we'll let them directly into the FBI systems. That took us about 4 years to accomplish because of all of the additional layers of security review from the FBI CJIS division, but it's a big win for public safety because it means the direct access into those systems that are otherwise really monotonous for them to build that access level into. And then multi-factor authentication components and some other things that we're doing there for security purposes. So I'll move on from that so that we can get into a little bit more, but I want to share with you one other thing that we're doing, which is around our patents that we're doing and some work that we're doing on the backside for future innovation. So one of them, which is pending now, is a patent for post-quantum resistant cryptographic system and methods. In other words, we're going to defend against I'm going to have to read this one. I'm sorry, guys. To analytically relevant quantum computers. I can never get that first word right. But the CRQCs that will be attacking us in the future, we're already developing patents and ways to work against that, specifically for AT&T, but more specifically for public safety. We're looking at it through a threat vector that most telecoms aren't looking at it through because we have a brand on the line and we have our public safety partners on the line. So we got to take some extra steps towards that. And then we're also already issued some patents, actually 4 of them, around public safety analytics gateway. That's part of the way that we're going to do that. Looking at how traffic is moving in the network, how we're doing priority and preemption, how can we do something when we have surges and spikes that's in a different way using AI and other tools over top of that. And so we're constantly looking to push the envelope for public safety in different ways moving forward. So key to this, and I want to double click into our response operations group for just a minute because it's key to how I'm going to wrap up, which is about how we helped with a response to a cybersecurity incident. The response operations group, when this started, we knew that we had to do this, right? It was a contractual obligation that we have dedicated assets. That was about it. How are you going to do response operations in a public safety environment? We know how to do network disaster recovery. We've done it for decades, right? We can do that all day long. But were we going to teach public safety how we do disaster recovery? I don't think so. Right? There's millions of public safety officials out there. So what we did was we pulled our public safety team together and say, well, what do we already know in public safety? What is something that we can lean into where we don't have to teach them anything? And that's the National Response Framework, the National Incident Management System, and the Incident Command System, NIMS, ICS, and NRF, right? This is something that every public safety practitioner in the country has had to go through training in that. It gives you a common lexicon. It gives you a common way to respond to a major incident. This is how we respond effectively to things like the recent hurricanes, wildfires, tsunamis in Guam. It doesn't matter. It's the same response, it's the same lexicon, it's the same way of doing business every single time. And so we embraced that here at AT&T, and we said, okay, we're going to teach ourselves foundationally to operate from where public safety is today, and then we're going to wrap our multi-decades capabilities of network disaster recovery around that. And that's exactly what we've done. And we've done it by combining that team, which is AT&T, and the response operations group, which is in the FirstNet organization. And FirstNet ROG is made up primarily, well, it's all first responders now. We had one in there that was not a previous first responder until about maybe 6 months ago. But about an average of 28 years of experience in public safety on that team. So they know what they're walking into. They know how to talk law enforcement. They know how to talk fire, EMS, emergency management, 911. It doesn't matter. We've got somebody on that team that knows how to do that. And we started with 72 dedicated assets. As we've grown from that 0, we clearly needed more assets in that pool. We're now at over 180. And you see a few deployments here on the screen, but they all look and feel similar. They're in the middle of the night. They're in the middle of a storm. They're in the middle of a wildfire. The most chaotic thing that you could come up with in your mind are people who have been there and done that with the response operations group and our network disaster recovery team who actually does the deployment. So we lead the response part of it. The NDR team comes over the top with the deployable assets, and they do a phenomenal job all across the country. But these are just a few examples of how we go about doing that. So then what do we do? In this case, we had a major hospital, a little less than a year ago, had a cyber attack. So it's not just wildfires and floods and those kinds of things. It's cyber attacks and anything else that you could think of that takes public safety offline for any reason. One of those was this case where hospital went completely offline. Emergency room is part of emergency medical services. That's how they're part of FirstNet. And they lost everything, guys, everything. No network, no phone system, no way to communicate to their devices in the hospital. So everything went back to a non-technical way of doing business, which they have a protocol for. They know how to do that. But how quickly can we get this back online? Hey, FirstNet, you told us when we signed up that you have a response operations group and you're going to be here contractually in no less than 14 hours, but we need you right now. We got to have you right now. And oh, by the way, our phone systems won't work unless it has that connectivity that can support it. So don't just bring those assets, but all of our people need a way to communicate, a device to communicate with. So what are you going to do to help us? In a matter of a few hours, we were able to get set up inside this hospital with SAT-Colts outside, satellite backhauled connectivity. And we were able to get them up and running at a baseline level with the stuff that you see deployed on the tables within a matter of just a few hours. We replicate this over and over and over again. I don't know if you saw on the by the numbers slide down in the bottom right-hand corner, we've done this over 2,200 times already this year. 2,200 times. We did it over 220 times just in Hurricane Helene. Right? So within a matter of about 6 days, we had deployed 220 times on that one incident. And we're able to do that because of the capabilities that AT&T brings to the table. I had no idea before I came to work here the awesome capabilities that we have. Did any of you in this room know we have our own meteorologists and our own weather operations center? We have to. We have assets all over the world, right? We got to know how flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, all of that, how is it going to affect our network? What is it going to do to us? And because of the awesome capabilities of this company, we're able to deliver for public safety in a way that no one else can. We stand behind that. We challenge anybody that wants to come forward and say that they can do what we do, because they cannot. And we're here. We're mission ready. We are AT&T FirstNet, and we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.